Donald Trump's trying to take away their intelligence clearance, but we'll come to that later. But what they say to the man is that Russia is guilty of messing things up in Syria, you know, as if we had no real involvement in Syria. Mosul, I want everybody to know, like, stands out as a place that we spent a month, 6 weeks bombing the people into nowhere. People that were driven out into the deserts and starved. And it's a year later, after we done used our white phosphorus, after we done dropped bombs that do not go off and are in the planet in the earth, after we plant landmines on our way through from the outskirts of Mosul to the inner city, of Mosul. And after we did all this, we just walked away,
Mhm.
just walked away as if it never happened. And as a nation, we never mention it again. Well, the people cannot return to Mosul because of the stench of death, because the odor of death is everywhere, of people buried in the rubble a year later. People cannot walk the streets of Mosul because of fear of landmines and unexploded ordnances. And we do not provide sappers to defuse our bombs. Mad Dog Mattis, when referring to the loss of civilian lives when we were bombing Mosul, had this to say: civilian deaths are just a fact of life.
Well, you see, they don't have to be a fact of life unless you make them that fact of life by causing their deaths.
General Rupert Jones. If you're going to liberate cities, it comes at a price.
Liberate.
Liberate.
Liberate. That was the word you used?
That's the word he used.
Great. That's great. How's that worked out? Those liberated cities, are they still very
There's
free
nobody
and functional?
there who can live with the stench of death. There's nobody there who can walk the streets safely. General Stephen Townsend said this was an unavoidable part of war. Unavoidable, he said. Just a part of war. That's all. But, ladies and gentlemen, do you celebrate a year later that you are the destroyer of cities? I am become the destroyer of life?
Of course you do. If you want that to be your calling card to the world, and if you want that to be your calling card to the defense industry, absolutely you do. The fact that you will not be careful, that you will just launch all the bombs you can, that you will use all the equipment that you can, that you will keep buying this equipment as much as you can, then yeah, that is absolutely the calling card to the world that you want to put out there. You're not doing this by accident. This is not
Hmm.
this is not careless. This is purposeful.
Emphasize your point. Raqqa. We attacked Raqqa. We fired 30,000 artillery rounds into that city. 30,000 artillery rounds exploding in your city. Could you imagine Harrisburg? Could you imagine living through 30,000 rounds exploding in Harrisburg?
You can't.
I can't either. You know, thousands of airstrikes on that city. Thousands of civilians died. You know what the United States claims? That we killed 23 civilians. We only killed 23 civilians, and we didn't mean to do that because we were, very intelligent about our targeting.
But also, they also claim that Hurricane Maria only killed 56 civilians too,
Yeah,
and it killed over 5,000.
yeah,
So
yeah,
obviously, we need to learn to count.
yeah,
Of course, that's not quite
yeah.
true. We got to learn to
Uh,
be
in,
honest.
in Afghanistan this weekend, we killed 14 civilians. when we bombed the city there. We bombed the house, and a family died. And the people who lived there say that we killed this family. And the Americans are saying that's not true. We had an investigation, and it's simply not true. We killed only 23 people when we fired 30,000 rounds in Raqqa. We used depleted uranium, if you remember, in Fallujah. We used white phosphorus in Mosul. We killed 14 Afghanistan civilians and claim the people are lying about it.
That seems like a really bad aim if we only killed that many people with tens of thousands of
Well,
shots.
it's a small town.
Yeah,
Oh, no, no, no. You got two. This is. Oh, you mean the 23 people?
yeah.
The 20. Well, that's impossible.
This is what I'm
I mean,
saying.
that doesn't like seem. uh, I mean, you said that too mildly. That's why I thought you were talking about the Afghanistan. And
Oh
seem it is impossible
no. Mhm.
that you fire 30,000 rounds into a city and only kill 23 people. Come on, you know. I mean, that's a lie from the get. You don't even have to investigate that to know it's a lie. You know, and the point of this is that we keep repeating that lie. We keep killing civilians. We keep becoming the destroyer of people. We keep becoming the destroyer of cities. And we keep lying to the American people that what? These families killed themselves? I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not sure what it is that we're supposed to believe about ourselves. What kind of a people do we think we are? That this is our behavior in the world, and we can't excuse it. We could simply say we investigated it and it's not true, and be done with it, or we could say it's just a fact of war. It's just a fact of life. It's just unavoidable part of war. Why do we as a people continue to accept that this is the kind of people that we are? Ladies and gentlemen, look in the mirror. To the world, you are a nasty people.
And it's something we've been displaying for years and years and years. This is nothing new. Go back to Vietnam. Go back to Korea. Let's
We
go back to
used
what we did in
depleted
Korea.
uranium in Korea. You know,
We decimated 90% of the major cities in Korea and killed tens of thousands, if not more. I'd say millions, probably, right?
we killed. The funny thing is, we killed as many people in our allies as we did in our enemies in Korea. We killed as many South Koreans as we killed North Koreans. We destroyed as many South Korean cities as we destroyed North. I mean, what is it with us? Pakistan was supposed to be our ally, and we droned them. I mean, it doesn't even pay to be an ally. I mean, for crying out loud. And then we
No.
expect you to still be friends.
Yeah. Yeah, Europe is certainly beginning to question its friendships with us now
They got to.
for any number of reasons.
But first of all, Europe needs to question itself too.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that whole notion of NATO. You know, you want to talk about the most foul thing. Here was a an organization now whose charter was to protect themselves from Russian aggression, and the Russians haven't been aggressive.
Well, guess what? The Soviet Union is long gone. If everything were right, they would have been dissolved by the early 90s.
The only thing is done is offensive wars, taking out people in countries like Libya. They bombing places like Syria. They bomb places like Afghanistan.
So,
You
my
know,
question would be
Kosovo. I mean,
what
these are
business
offensive and offensive.
what business does NATO, which is US plus European, have in North Africa? What business do we have attacking Libya in the first place?
We we don't like the idea of people meddling in our elections, but we love the idea of regime change. If we don't like your government, we'll change it. If we don't like Gaddafi, we'll put somebody else in office or nobody. It would dissolve your country into a nothing but a war zone between warring war chiefs, and we'll supply the weapons so that they can keep killing each other.
Yeah.
You know, we'll destroy you. I am what? I'm a, what is it? Amagita, the destroyer of life.
Ah, the Bhagavad Gita.
Say it again.
From the Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita. There we go. You know,
I have become death,
I have become
destroyer of
death, the
worlds.
destroyer of worlds.
Hmm.
You know, then we are. We am.
Hmm.
You know.
Speaking of just one of the really, really ironic things that I've heard in a while about Israel selling weapons to Nazis in the
Yeah.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
Do you, do you see some kind of
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance here?
Yeah. I see that Israel is absolutely insane.
Israel, Nazis, Israel,
Israel is
Nazis.
totally insane. Netanyahu, Yahu, he's an insane man. There's no question anybody who has any understanding at all of the Ukraine, there's no question that the government in Ukraine and certain forces in Ukraine are neo Nazis. They are the living embodiment of Nazism. They claim it and they act it. They have no shame about it. And Israel has no shame selling them weapons, selling weapons to the Nazis to subdue the non Nazis in their midst. What have become of Israel? What has become of Israel? You know, that it has lost its way so thoroughly. There was a time, if I get biblical on you, when God looked at Israel like that and told him the children of Israel are lost, and he was taking away their privileges, basically.
There's another show on the station that put forth that like Israel is coming to a time of trial and judgment. If that were the case, I would be a little worried if I were Israel.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
The idea that like how do you treat a neighbor, and some would even say that those, if one believes in the message of Sodom and Gomorrah, that was the real reason for
Yes.
the destruction of Sodom or Gomorrah. I forget which
Well,
one, but
yeah.
just the inhospitality to
Uh, uh,
travelers and visitors.
of Sodom, it was that they didn't treat the visitors well. They didn't accept the visitors. They
And the
didn't
U.S. could
recognize
take
the
a good
visitors.
lesson from that too. Probably we're not very open to
But
that.
we don't. I mean, we've never been that way.
No,
You know, we've always been openly hostile to visitors, to any immigrants from anywhere. We were openly hostile to the Italians, to the Chinese, to the Jewish people. When anybody came here, we were hostile to them. To the Irish. I mean, you can go back in our history and find that we don't have any discriminatory bones in our body when it comes to discriminating. We'll discriminate against anybody.
I'd like to think that's somehow comforting
Yeah,
if it weren't so discriminatory.
we don't care. Irish, Italian, what? You know, yeah, we got a name for you and we got a place for you. If it's not 5 points, it'd be something similar.
Mm.
You know, but Israel, I mean, which has come down to declaring itself an apartheid state.
Oh, absolutely. They
You
just
know,
declared that with the nation state law, and I got to get in more specifically as to what this really entails because I'm not 100% certain what the revised deal entails, but it actively encourages an Israeli state and discourages the Arabic
it
language.
encourages a Jewish state
Yes,
and discourages any other
religion and language and
language.
culture,
No,
the
it's
whole bit.
yeah, right. Nothing else. It's apartheid
It
strictly.
encourages settlements and encroachment on the
You take
land
their
of
land. You
Palestinians.
take their land. I heard an interesting discussion where Iran. was described as just a distraction. That the relationship with Saudi Arabia and all that stuff was a distraction. In other words, so that every time you would look at Iran, then they could go ahead and do something against the Palestinians. You know, that their real ambition is just simply to take over everything that the Palestinians have and remove the Palestinians as as they can, even if they have to commit complete genocide,
By their rhetoric, to drive them into the sea,
drive them into
strangle the
into the
snakes in their
ground.
cribs.
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Avigdor Lieberman,
yeah,
I
yeah,
believe, who's currently
yeah,
it's one of the ministers of defense.
yes.
Defense. I always like that. Ministers of defense.
Offensive defense.
Yeah.
Uh,
Why don't we just keep it Minister of War and be honest?
hmm but no, that's what Israel is about, without question. And all these other things that they keep getting us involved in, as their distractions. I mean, we're going to end up paying the penalty for warring with Iran, or for them shooting down Syrian airplanes, and these things that they do to keep the pressure, keep the eyes looking elsewhere, while they continue. You know that they just did to the Palestinians. They bombed how many? 60 Hamas locations in Gaza.
Yeah, it was extensive.
It was very extensive, And while they're doing that, they're pointing the finger and talking about Iran, you know. And here we are talking about Iran, and here's nobody in this country talking about 60 locations in an already devastated prison camp being bombed by an elite force, probably the most elite force in the Middle East,
It was
in
it
weapon
was
superiority.
reputedly in response to the death of one IDF commando,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
one member of the Israeli Defense Force was
Yeah,
killed.
yeah.
And this shelling, this incredible plethora of shells, was as a result, or said to be a result of this, but it wasn't a justification. It was just a reason. It was just something to put out there to
Yeah.
do what they
It's just
already wanted to do.
that they do it. They what do they call it? Mowing the grass. You know,
I never heard that term.
every once in a while they got to go out and mow the grass. That means kill a bunch of Palestinians. But that's what they refer to it in Israel as
Jeez,
mowing the grass. Yeah.
it's grim.
Hmm.
It's a very grim way to put it. So you're familiar with this show, Who is America? Have you watched any of it?
I saw this guy, this congressman from Georgia. I saw the replay of him showing his buttocks and using the N word, and he was saying that he was learning how to defend America against terrorists, Arab jihadists.
Mhm.
And I don't know how those two things went together, showing your buttocks and using the N word.
And somehow taking upskirt photos of women in hijabs.
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is quite a gag isn't the right word, but this is quite an experience, and I'm not sure how long he can keep it up since people are becoming very aware of it.
But I don't understand, how could you trick somebody into doing something like that? I don't understand, what trick could you use? I mean, the guy said he was tricked into showing his butt.
He wanted to show his butt. He always
Okay,
wanted
he
to
was
show his
tricked
butt
into
on national
to
TV.
thinking that that's how you defend yourself against a jihadist, by showing your butt. I mean, what is the trick? I like to know what that trick was. I want to use it myself. How did he trick somebody into showing their butt in order to fight jihadists?
Apparently, Sarah Palin's going to be on an upcoming episode.
Really, what did she do?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm just seeing it. She said she was tricked into an interview.
I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I mean, this to me is like an indication of the mental adeptness of our leaders.
Not that that's a surprise. This was a man who, I mean, he certainly supported the Muslim veil ban in Georgia and he was, of course, grossly anti-immigrant and everything you would
Yeah,
imagine in that
right.
way. In this show, Who is America by Sacha Baron Cohen, I'm sure you've seen his other stuff, Ali G and Borat and
Borak,
all
I
that.
saw that stuff.
It,
That was
it's
like
nice.
wow.
It's nice. No, I mean it's always been a little bit over the top. It's always been a little bit
Mhm.
much, and it in and of itself has not been politically correct or always all that cool. He says it's satire, and I think for the most part it is, but he walks a very fine
He's
line, as I suppose satire should. But
mm.
you know, this was some impressive stuff. This is pretty good. He's quitting now. This representative is quitting,
He
resigning.
lost his election.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, he lost his election. He only had like 6 months to serve,
Oh, so he's just getting out of
and he's
Dodge.
just getting that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh,
Well,
no, he had vowed that he wouldn't quit. This was before, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean the guys. I mean, what could you say? I mean, how much if he had to take an IQ test, would he know a cup from a saucer? I'm just asking.
Probably not. He probably wouldn't.
Hmm.
So I want to save this part about ice for our next show, which maybe
Ice is
which
interesting.
may be Friday. We haven't talked about that yet. I
Yeah,
don't know if you're available or not,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
know
As a
that.
matter of fact, I meant to send you back in.
Okay,
Yeah, so yeah, let's do that, and we'll use that as an independent wraparound. So,
sounds good. I figured this would be good for this because I know the guests coming on would be up to talking about this. And
and one of the things that we have to talk about when we talk about ice for sure is the dichotomy between people talking about, i.e., the separation of kids and all that, and the horrors of it, and their willingness then to do something about it. What I'm saying, for example, is out of 90 columns that was published in our major newspapers, 85 of them said that we should continue ICE as it is, but we have to make it more humane. Democrats and Republicans, nobody is willing to go into ICE and see the problem as being systemic. They're saying that ICE is fine the way it is, except that it's being misused by Trump. And I maintain that that is not the case. That those cages were not built by Trump. That Obama didn't have the reputation of deporter in chief for no reason.
this was a long
This
game.
was a
These were
long
built in
game.
the early
Yes, right. This
2000s
is
or even
2003 that
Mhm.
we get this uh, invented bureaucracy that somehow is supposed to save us after people from someplace else in the world who had a whole nother situation came in and bombed the twin towers.
Yeah.
Well, what the heck did this have to do with deporting Mexicans? I mean, another thing. But we use that as a pretext to pass and bring into existence this ICE to do the very job that it's doing. And we're refusing, as we go in this crisis, to change that mission. Democrat and Republican are refusing to change that mission. Nobody wants to talk about, say, for example, getting rid of ICE. Why do we need an ICE?
Even Ocasio Cortez took a step back and said, "Well, we need something. We need some sort of border process. We need something." I don't know. She's still very strongly anti-ICE,
Mm-hmm. Well,
but
see, but then when it comes to what are we going to do about it, everything falls away. Everybody falls away. Oh, we're very good at criticizing the president for what they're doing, but we're terrible about correcting the problem.
Mhm.
Let's act on the problem. And I'll save the rest of that discussion for Friday.
Sounds good. So, Bill, I had this crazy idea the other day, and I guess I shouldn't have told Jeff Bezos about it.
Uh,
That instead of libraries, because
uh,
who wants to go to a library anyway?
yeah,
Who
right.
I mean, they're old, they're musty,
Yeah,
boring.
all those books.
Yeah, we should replace them with Amazon stores. That way, people can come in and buy things too.
Mm,
I'll be honest though, that
wow.
wasn't my idea. That was a columnist in Forbes magazine.
But they're talking about real physical stores. They're not talking about buying everything online, huh?
Yeah,
They're talking about real physical
at
stores.
least for now.
Oh yeah.
I believe it's more of probably a transitory thing.
Mm. To get rid of libraries.
Hmm?
Libraries. I mean, the last time I heard of anybody having a notion like that was going way back to Constantinople.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they realized that they had to get rid of that library.
Well, in Alexandria.
Yeah,
Hmm.
in Alexandria. Yeah, right, in
I remember it
Alexandria.
in a certain novel entitled Fahrenheit 451,
Oh, I remember that.
hmm
Yeah, yeah.
where they believed that they must burn all the books.
You know, when I was in Liberia, I lived in a town called Bomey Hills, and Bomey Hills had a library. I said, "Hey, when they had the Civil War, and when Doe came to power, he had an army full of people who were illiterate, and the way it was described to me, uh, took it out on the library. You know, when they came to town, they destroyed every book, every page of every book that was in the library. This was a part of a revolution to bring in ignorance,
An
an
idiocracy.
anti-intellectual revolution.
Oh, I'm sorry, were you talking about America again?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was a place with a great deal of American influence.
Absolutely.
You know, Liberia. That's where our slaves went to set up an empire for America. You know, but they had this attitude just as when Samuel Kanyan Doe came into power, uh, that intellectualism and libraries and all that, had to go. You can't rule people who were too smart. We feel the same way about
Uh,
teaching history here,
Otherwise,
but
it might take you to task and
mm,
hold your feet to the fire, if you will. There's already been a strict backlash against this. Librarians across the country just have unleashed
I can
their
imagine.
fury after having been silent for so many years because of the working in a library, of course.
Well, they
But
used the librarians during the time when they were doing a Joe McCarthy stuff too. That was the last time that they really got on librarians and books and all that kind of thing. You know, and we need to really take a look at that McCarthy era because that's you want to talk about something that has revisited itself on Pod America.
that was close. That wasn't that long ago.
No,
That was like 80 years ago.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
less.
well,
Like
50s,
60, 70
yeah,
years ago.
yeah, yeah,
That wasn't
yeah.
too long.
No, but it's back.
Hmm
It's back. I mean, if you read the wrong book or say the wrong thing, you're subject to go on a list.
And libraries provide so many other services just for community, but especially to the marginalized. The free internet access, the community building, seminars, bringing people place to bring your kids so they have like a fun, safe place to play. They provide movie nights. They provide reading for toddlers. They provide so many things that are just really not that it's not also for the rich, but especially for
Mm.
those who are not rich, that they can still come and, I don't know, feel like they're part of the community.
It was the library in Philadelphia, actually, believe it or not, the Central Branch Library, the biggest library in the city, in Center City, that encouraged me to become a writer. It was a librarian who saw me write a poem and showed me books of poetry. It was a librarian who, when I had a short story that I got published, who took that short story and made a deliberate thing of putting it in the library so that I could feel accepted as a writer. You know,
Wow.
the library itself encouraged me in that direction. Even beyond anything that happened to me in school. Uh, School never. I mean, school was happy that I was making it through. It was a decent GPA,
Mhm.
but the librarians were the ones who recommended me books and read my writing.
And that's awesome, but I don't think that's an isolated incident. I think
No,
that
I
happens.
that's what libraries
Yeah,
did. I mean,
I think it's what they still do. I think
yeah,
especially in an age where, I don't know, and for good reason, that kids are taught to be wary of some adults and to just be careful. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if you come to a library and you see a librarian and they're this trusted person with whom you can develop a relationship and an affinity and who can actually, like take stock in you and help you to grow.
Yeah.
That's a rare thing these
Oh,
days.
I really did. When I was I was 4 years old. I can absolutely remember when I was 4 years old and I was at St. Martha's Settlement House and I was in the library and I was actually crawling on the floor looking at books. And there really was a great haired old white lady who sat me down in front of her and started reading to me. I mean, not that my mother didn't read to me all the time, but there was something special. I mean, I just expected my mother to read to me, but there was something special about reading and stories when you hear it also from outside and in these kinds of places. You know, I mean, it was just something that we did at home. But wait a minute, this is something important. Listen to this lady read to me. This lady likes reading to me. Boy, isn't that a great story? You know. And then when I started reading back to her, what a great experience that was. You know, that was a little teeny library in a little teeny settlement house in South Philadelphia. You know, and I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, experiencing that library before it closed and the city built another library up the street. Yeah.
And this just reminds me so much of yet another form, as if we needed it, yet another form of redlining, yet another form of
Absolutely,
marginalization,
absolutely,
dehumanization.
absolutely. They
Just
know the value of libraries. Yeah,
the
the,
value of libraries, in my opinion, is far and beyond the marginal level of profits that you
it has
might
nothing to do with
earn.
profit. You know, the thing is that we got to take the way this judgment of everything on the basis of profit. There's hardly anything. There's not that many things that should be judged on the basis of profit. You know, whether or not you killed the red-breasted robin should have nothing to do with profit. You know, and whether or not you teach kids to read should have nothing to do with profit. Whether or not you educate kids in college should have nothing to do with profit. You know, schools, education are vital parts of our society. Like water is vital to life. You know, informed and smart and educated people, populace, is important to the life of your nation. It has nothing to do with profit.
Just imagine growing up in this country, and I guess I don't have to imagine because I did, where everything is a commodity, where everything has a price,
Yeah,
where everything you receive is an entitlement.
yeah. Everything they say, well, yeah, yeah. Well, who are you? How much do you make? you know, it's like you don't give a chance. I'm a poet. you know,
The idea
yeah.
that,
Do you make any money from your poetry? Well, then you're not a poet. What?
wow, but also the idea that you don't deserve to survive.
Well, of
You don't
course
you
not.
don't deserve to live in a place, you don't deserve to eat food, you don't deserve health care if you are not of a certain job or a certain class or of a certain level of income.
But there was even a point at which, if you worked all your life and you came to a point where you couldn't work anymore, then you were useless to the society. You should just go home and die. Okay.
Before Social Security.
Well, and even after, as we try to take
True.
away Social Security, what do we expect then of these economic inputs as we take away food stamps and Social Security and all these other things that people, you know, need after their economic productivity has waned? You
Absolutely.
still need things, and it's the health and welfare. The governments are instituted. I keep saying this, you know, for the welfare of the people, for the good of the society. It's instituted for the good of the government, and that's us. And not only that, but those people who are in government derive their just powers from the governed. Their powers come from us. Consequently, if we think that old people should eat, it should be automatically that we pass the kind of measures that make sure that old people eat. No argument. If we think that poor kids should eat too, then we don't say that there should be a 20 hour. If you work less than 20 hours, then your kids can't eat.
And let us not pretend that this is the inevitable consequence of the free market.
That
Firstly,
has nothing to do with
the
the
free
free
market
market.
is never free. But secondly, these are conscious choices made by people. This is the
You know,
conscious decision as to how to tilt our country and how we want to live.
even if there was a free market, that has nothing to. You sit down and you make up a constitution because you're creating a society and you're creating a society that is going to take care of its people. A government of, for, and by the people. Then all that other stuff that has to do with making money and whatnot is aside from this notion. As a matter of fact, if there's money on the side over there, it should contribute to this notion because this is the primary notion. The most primary notion is that you have a country that takes care of its people and it uses all its resources to do that. And if money is a resource, then it uses money to do that. Taxpayers' money, if you want to say it, Trump is taking your taxpayer money and giving it to farmers. Well, we've always taken your taxpayer money and given it to the fossil fuel industry.
And we have always done it and given it to banks in a much bigger
Oh
quantity
my
than
God.
this. Let's look back to 2008, President
Hey,
Obama.
man,
No, that would
for
have been
crying out
Bush.
loud.
Bush slash
That,
Obama.
uh,
Bush and Obama
that was
were
Bush
both
Obama.
complicit.
Obama gave the real money back to the bankers. I mean, sure enough, Bush set it up.
He also enshrined
You
them in
know,
his cabinet.
yeah,
You know,
right. But look, this is what we do. But now all of a sudden, because we want to argue with somebody, we're not looking at the systemic.
indeed,
And I'm going to say that that ultimately it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. You go through all this little mess and all this little mess and all this nonsense, and argue about whether or not a kid should eat, and argue about whether or not somebody should have a food stamp, and you play yourself as a big wheeler dealer on these little issues about taking food away from a baby. And in the meantime, you change the environment such that you can't live anyway. So big deal. You came, you saw, you died. You didn't came and saw and conquered. That is the result of human history on this earth. We came, we saw, we died. We did it to ourselves. And none of this stuff matters. If you want to keep arguing about whether or not it's right or wrong that babies should eat and whether or not water is precious for life, and all these other stupid arguments that you want to have while you exercise your superiority and exceptionalism, and that is what is destructive, and that is what's destroying us. And those notions like that, in terms of your leadership, is taking us down into this rabbit hole that is the darkness of the end of mankind. And you did this. You so smart out there. You so exceptional, and you so full of leadership that this is where you're taking us, and you're not even smart enough to put on the brakes.
we are the authors of our own demise.
Amen.
And with that, we are going to have to end the show for today. I'll be traveling to Philly. Bill will be traveling to the first floor to instruct a
I'm going
janitor.
to see Vincent. Vincent, he comes from the AARP, and he's going to do us a good job.
Sounds good. So we hope to see you probably Friday, and are gonna. I'm not sure if we can have. Let's see. I think Catherine's gonna come on, and perhaps Shalik Moss's mother. I'm not sure
Uh,
if she's available yet, but that's for
yeah,
Mrs. Kim Thomas
yeah.
for first just to talk about the whole situation and some other things, but to talk about Shalik's walk, which will be happening, I believe, on the 5th of
Mm.
August. And she'll be down to talk about that and some other stuff. So we'll hope to make that happen on Friday. So stay tuned. Keep your eyes open. We'll be back.
Good day, folks, and bound to do better.
For Bill Jameson, this is Justin